He was just a quiet old man by the lake, seeking peace, but police saw a threat. A K9, named Orion, received orders to attack, but when he reached the mysterious figure, Orion froze. Instead of biting, the dog gently lay at his feet, recognizing a bond long forgotten. Because this wasn't an ordinary man, it was Pope Clement IX himself. How did Orion remember the Pope? What secret past do they share? Comment below with your theories, hit subscribe, and don't miss how forgiveness changed an entire town. The morning sky hung heavy over Pineview, a sleepy town in Maine tucked neatly beside a silver-threaded lake and surrounded by vast pine forests. It was early autumn, and the leaves had begun to show their fiery colors, oranges and reds scattered among stubborn greens. The air was crisp, the chill lingering stubbornly from a night of drizzling rain, leaving the ground slick with moisture and the scent of wet earth thick in the air. Mist clung low over the surface of Lake Merrow, shrouding it like an ethereal cloak, and birdsong was subdued, as if nature itself hesitated, waiting for something yet unknown. At the edge of the lake, away from the main roads, a lone figure sat quietly on an old wooden bench. He was elderly, with a gentle face deeply marked by lines, each wrinkle bearing witness to countless days of both worry and wisdom. His eyes, clear but carrying the weight of silent sorrow, gazed intently across the calm waters, unmoving, reflecting deeply inward. This was Jonathan Holloway, known worldwide as Pope Clement IX, though now unrecognizable out of his ceremonial robes. At 70, his back remained straight, his posture proud despite the heaviness in his heart. His silver-white hair was hidden beneath a woolen cap, and he wore an unassuming brown jacket, simple slacks, and comfortable shoes worn by years of use. Only those who knew him well might detect the familiar warmth that often radiated from his gaze, though today that warmth was dimmed by a private melancholy. Unbeknownst to him, Pineview was not accustomed to strangers. The town, with its population barely touching 1,000 souls, had a collective rhythm, steady and predictable, disrupted only by tourists who quickly passed through to more scenic main locales. Strangers were rare enough to set tongues wagging, and Jonathan's quiet arrival had already begun to ripple gently through the small community. On the far side of the lake, near Main Street, stood the old Pineview Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Grant Dawson sat inside, nursing his second cup of bitter coffee, black and strong as his temperament. Dawson was a man in his mid-50s, burly and broad-shouldered, with a thick salt and pepper mustache and a head of closely cropped, graying hair. His uniform was impeccable, his belt polished, badge gleaming, reflecting a man who found comfort in order. Grant Dawson did not tolerate ambiguity. Years in law enforcement had taught him that uncertainty invited trouble. Recent personal setbacks, including a messy divorce and strained relationships within the community, had made him wary, suspicious of anything out of the ordinary. The mysterious arrival by Lake Merrow disturbed him more than he cared to admit. His brows furrowed deeply as he glanced at a hastily scribbled note about a strange elderly man spotted near the lake, sitting silent for hours. Across from him, standing nervously in the doorway, was Jenna Collins, one of Pineview's few deputies. Jenna was 29, slender yet athletic, her honey-colored hair tied in a neat ponytail, accentuating a youthful face marked by earnestness and compassion. Despite her relative inexperience, Jenna's steady nature had quickly earned respect from colleagues and townsfolk alike. But today, her expressive blue eyes betrayed unease. Beside her sat Orion, her trusted partner, a German shepherd trained rigorously in search and rescue and protection. At 6 years old, Orion was magnificent, his black and tan fur dense and shining, ears alert, eyes intelligent and gentle. Yet Jenna knew Orion carried his own invisible scars. The loss of his previous handler in a violent encounter had left the dog with subtle traces of trauma, moments of hesitation that only Jenna noticed. She stroked Orion's head softly, sensing his anxiety mirror hers as they awaited Dawson's orders. "Take Orion," Dawson ordered gruffly, his voice hard, eyes cold. Check the lakeside. See who this stranger is and what he's doing there. And Collins, keep it simple, no trouble. Yes, Sheriff, Jenna replied quietly, unable to shake her discomfort. Dawson's inflexible suspicion unsettled her, but she swallowed her protest. She clipped the leash onto Orion's harness, whispering quietly to reassure him before they stepped out into the damp chill. At the lakeside, Jonathan remained lost in his silent reflection, oblivious to the scrutiny he had unintentionally attracted. His thoughts traveled to events in Rome, conflicts, allegations, scandals. He had traveled thousands of miles, not running, but seeking solace, hoping to reconcile his troubled spirit with the simple purity of nature and quiet contemplation. Yet even here, peace eluded him. Something inside remained unresolved. Nearby, hidden behind tall pines, Oliver Reed, a 12-year-old boy from Pineview Middle School, watched curiously. Oliver was thin, freckled, and perpetually disheveled, with tousled brown hair and bright, inquisitive green eyes. Always curious, Oliver often roamed freely around the lake, exploring, fishing, or simply daydreaming of adventures beyond Pineview's borders. The strange figure intrigued him greatly. Oliver considered approaching the old man, but hesitated, sensing this was no ordinary visitor. He pulled his coat tighter, content for now to observe quietly. Jenna approached cautiously along the lakeshore path, Orion padding quietly at her side. The closer they drew to the bench, the more Jenna sensed Orion's subtle shift, his muscles tightening beneath fur, breathing measured and deliberate. She hesitated briefly, glancing down at her partner. Orion raised his intelligent amber eyes to hers, conveying a cautious trust. Jenna took a deep breath, calming her nerves before stepping closer. "Good morning, sir," she called softly, breaking the thick silence. Jonathan turned slowly, offering a gentle, guarded smile. Jenna felt an inexplicable gentleness radiating from his gaze, a quiet warmth that caught her unexpectedly. "Good morning," Jonathan replied, his voice soft, tinged with weariness but unmistakably kind. He noticed Orion, the German shepherd, watching him intently, yet quietly, the dog's posture alert but strangely reserved. Jonathan held Orion's gaze, feeling a fleeting recognition that he quickly dismissed as sentimental fancy. "Just enjoying the lake, deputy," Jonathan offered politely. "The beauty here soothes the mind." Jenna relaxed slightly, recognizing sincerity in his tone. But Sheriff Dawson's orders echoed in her mind, demanding identification and explanations. Reluctantly, she pressed further. "Do you mind if I ask who you are and what brings you here?" Jenna's voice remained gentle, respectful despite her instructions. Jonathan hesitated, knowing honesty would quickly disrupt his anonymity. "Just a weary traveler seeking some solitude," he finally replied, offering a half-truth to preserve his fragile refuge. At that moment, Orion gently tugged his leash, stepping forward and pressing his snout lightly against Jonathan's outstretched palm. Jenna watched, startled, as Orion, usually cautious, calmly leaned into the stranger's touch, tail wagging slowly, almost reverently. "Remarkable," Jonathan murmured softly, stroking Orion's sleek fur. The brief, silent exchange moved Jenna deeply, raising questions she couldn't yet articulate. Hidden behind the trees, Oliver's eyes widened in astonishment. He'd never seen Orion behave so gently with a stranger before. Oliver's heart quickened, curiosity overwhelming him. From his office window, Grant Dawson observed through binoculars, noting the gentle interaction with growing suspicion. He slammed the binoculars down angrily, frustration surging. His gut warned him that something was off, and Dawson trusted his instincts implicitly. Back by the lake, Jenna gently withdrew Orion, nodding respectfully to Jonathan. "Thank you, sir. Please enjoy your day." Jonathan nodded slowly, sensing that peace here might be elusive after all. Jenna walked slowly back toward the sheriff's office, her mind filled with conflicting emotions. Orion glanced back once, eyes lingering meaningfully on Jonathan, sensing something Jenna had not yet comprehended. As the morning sun rose higher, dissipating the last remnants of mist from Lake Merrow, Pineview continued to quietly whisper about the mysterious new arrival. Jonathan remained seated, lost again in contemplation, unaware of how deeply he had already affected the quiet rhythms of this small town. Unaware that soon, peace itself would become his most elusive desire. As the days passed, the morning chill intensified, weaving an icy embrace around Pineview. The sun rose later each day, its hesitant rays barely able to penetrate the thickening mist that hovered stubbornly above Lake Merrow. It was as if the town itself held its breath, uncertain of how to react to the silent stranger who now seemed a permanent fixture at the lakeside bench. Jonathan Holloway remained unaware, or perhaps indifferent, to the growing whispers his daily vigils had incited among the townspeople. At Pineview's modest general store, old Evelyn Harper, the town's self-appointed historian and source of local gossip, leaned heavily against the counter. Evelyn was in her early 70s, short and plump, with tightly curled white hair that she always covered partially with a colorful scarf. Her clear blue eyes sparkled with intelligence and a thirst for knowledge, yet a shadow lingered within them, a remnant of loneliness since her husband's passing 5 years prior. Evelyn was talkative, always welcoming a good story or speculation, and lately, Jonathan's silent routine by the lake had become her primary focus. "You mark my words, Jeanette," Evelyn said to the shopkeeper, a younger woman with gentle eyes and a patient smile. "No normal man sits like a statue for hours each day, staring at the lake. He's either heartbroken, dangerous, or hiding something. Possibly all three." Jeanette only nodded politely, accustomed to Evelyn's penchant for drama, though even she felt slightly unsettled by the stranger's presence. Evelyn quickly gathered her shopping, determined to share her theories with anyone who would listen, ensuring the whispers would soon reach every corner of Pineview. Inside Pineview's small wooden church, Father Albert Mason paced anxiously, his dark robe swishing softly with each restless step. Father Mason was in his late 50s, tall and thin, with a scholarly appearance. Thin wire-framed glasses perched atop his sharp nose, dark hair graying gracefully at the temples. Normally calm and soft-spoken, he was revered by the community for his steady guidance through difficult times. Yet recent months have been trying, a noticeable decline in attendance and contributions troubling his usually peaceful soul. The unexplained absence of the mysterious stranger from Sunday services only deepened Father Mason's unease. In Father Mason's mind, Jonathan's deliberate isolation bordered on offensive. Pineview was a place of communal solidarity, a quiet town where everyone contributed, even if only through presence. The man's persistent solitude and refusal to engage fueled suspicion. Was he a heretic, a threat, or simply a lost soul? Father Mason resolved he would soon find out, determined to maintain peace and clarity among his dwindling flock. Meanwhile, Sheriff Grant Dawson's office grew busier each day. Reports and concerns poured in continuously, stirred by Evelyn's gossip and amplified by community anxiety. Dawson sat hunched at his desk, his thick fingers drumming impatiently on a stack of hastily written complaint slips. He scowled deeply, frustrated by the lack of concrete evidence against the stranger, but unwilling to dismiss residents' fears as mere paranoia. Dawson's trust issues, stemming from a painful divorce and the betrayal of former friends, had made him cautious, perhaps overly cautious. His dark eyes, shadowed by weariness, betrayed growing suspicion. He felt increasingly pressured to act decisively, to prove himself still capable of protecting Pineview's quiet peace. "Collins!" Dawson barked suddenly, summoning Jenna from across the office. She entered hesitantly, Orion calmly padding beside her, his eyes watchful, ears alert. "Sheriff!" Jenna's voice was gentle, her blue eyes subtly conveying apprehension. Dawson's behavior troubled her deeply. His rigidity had intensified lately, creating tension throughout the department. "I need you and Orion to patrol the lakeside regularly now," Dawson instructed sternly, his voice low and authoritative. "We need answers, Collins. The community's growing restless. No more gentle questioning. Be assertive." "Yes, Sheriff," Jenna replied softly, though her chest tightened uneasily. Dawson's distrustful nature clashed sharply with her own compassionate instincts. She exchanged a meaningful glance with Orion, whose golden brown eyes seemed to mirror her conflict. Unbeknownst to the adults, Oliver Reed had taken matters into his own hands. After observing Jenna's initial interaction with Jonathan, Oliver's curiosity had exploded into determination. Equipped with his notebook, a pencil, and his grandfather's old binoculars slung awkwardly around his thin neck, Oliver set out on his self-appointed investigative mission. Oliver, at 12 years old, was bright, imaginative, and fearless in ways unique to childhood innocence. His tousled hair often fell into his keen eyes, which now scanned carefully from behind the cover of tall pines. Each morning before school, Oliver would watch Jonathan from a distance, noting his movements and the lack thereof. Oliver wondered deeply what thoughts occupied the silent man, scribbling imaginatively elaborate possibilities in his notebook. Was Jonathan a former spy, an artist searching for inspiration, or perhaps, as Evelyn theorized, a heartbroken recluse? This morning, Oliver crouched quietly among damp leaves and ferns, observing closely as Jonathan once again stared blankly across the lake. Oliver's heart raced as he contemplated whether to approach or keep observing from afar. His imagination ran wild, turning the mundane scene into an exciting adventure, though deep down, Oliver sensed a gentle sadness in Jonathan's quiet vigil. As Oliver wrestled internally, Jenna approached Jonathan cautiously, Orion padding softly beside her. Jonathan turned, offering the same gentle, sad smile that had haunted Jenna's thoughts. "Still here, I see," Jenna spoke kindly, trying to mask her unease under Dawson's strict orders. "Yes," Jonathan replied calmly, his voice soft and reflective. "The lake helps quiet the noise inside, Deputy. Have you considered joining the community a bit more?" Jenna ventured carefully. "Maybe coming to church? Father Mason would love to welcome you, I'm sure." Jonathan paused, a shadow passing briefly across his expression. "Perhaps soon," he answered softly, unwilling to elaborate further. Jenna nodded politely, sensing an emotional boundary she chose not to cross. Orion, meanwhile, leaned gently against Jonathan's leg, reinforcing Jenna's growing certainty that Dawson's concerns were misplaced. As Jenna and Orion departed, Jonathan resumed his silent contemplation, unaware that Oliver had crept closer, binoculars now trained directly on him. Jonathan's silent grief fascinated Oliver, stirring within him questions he didn't yet fully understand. Suddenly, a soft rustle broke Oliver's concentration. Startled, he turned sharply to see a large, sleek black cat cautiously approaching. Oliver recognized Midnight, the notorious stray that roamed Pineview freely. Midnight's shiny coat and intelligent green eyes reflected the mystique surrounding her, aloof, independent, yet occasionally friendly. She purred softly, rubbing gently against Oliver's side, momentarily distracting him. "Shoo, Midnight," Oliver whispered urgently, returning his gaze quickly to Jonathan. But the sudden sound had caught Jonathan's attention, who turned toward Oliver's hiding spot, his clear eyes locking directly onto Oliver's startled gaze. Oliver froze, heart pounding furiously. Midnight, indifferent to the tension, continued her affectionate circling. Jonathan smiled kindly, beckoning gently. "It's all right." Jonathan's voice was warm and reassuring. "I don't bite, I promise." Oliver hesitated only briefly before stepping slowly from the trees, Midnight trotting confidently beside him. Oliver's curiosity finally outweighed his caution. "You don't seem dangerous," Oliver confessed bluntly, eyes wide and earnest. "But everyone thinks you are." Jonathan smiled, eyes softening further. "And you, young man? What do you think?" Oliver shrugged honestly. "I think you're sad," he admitted quietly. Jonathan nodded slowly, deeply moved by the child's intuitive observation. Indeed, Jonathan sighed softly, staring across Lake Merrow once more. Sadness and peace often walk together, young man. Sometimes they even find each other. Oliver sat beside him silently, midnight curling lazily at their feet. Neither spoke further, each comforted quietly by the presence of the other, unaware that nearby, Father Mason had paused in his morning walk, his keen eyes narrowing suspiciously as he witnessed the gentle interaction. Concern surged within him anew, reinforcing the uncertainty spreading throughout Pineview. The early dawn broke through a dense canopy of clouds, bathing Pineview in muted shades of gray and silver. Overnight, the weather had turned sharply colder, laying a thin, brittle frost over the rooftops, the grass stiff underfoot. Mist curled thickly around Lake Merrow, rendering its edges indistinct, ethereal. The townspeople were only just stirring, unaware that today would challenge their quiet lives in ways they couldn't foresee. At the sheriff's office, Grant Dawson paced restlessly in front of his desk, his heavy boots tapping impatiently against the worn wooden floor. Sleep had evaded him entirely, his mind consumed by the persistent worry and suspicions amplified by the community's growing unease. Dawson's once methodical temperament had frayed thin, his patience deteriorating rapidly under the weight of uncertainty. Driven by anxious citizens and his own wounded pride, he resolved it was time to confront the mysterious stranger once and for all. Across town, Jenna Collins woke to her phone ringing urgently, the sound slicing through her shallow slumber. Quickly dressing in her uniform, she collected Orion, sensing his alertness mirror her own mounting concern. Orion, ever perceptive, watched Jenna carefully, sensing her tension. The German shepherd stood tall, muscular, and confident, his thick black and tan coat gleaming even in the dim morning light, his eyes alert yet gentle, qualities that Jenna deeply admired. The streets were quiet as Jenna arrived at the sheriff's office, where Dawson awaited her impatiently. "Morning, Collins," he began sharply, eyes narrowed. "Enough of gentle interactions. Today, you'll take Orion and apprehend this stranger by the lake. The community needs reassurance." Jenna hesitated, the command unsettling her profoundly. Dawson noted her uncertainty, his jaw clenching. "Collins, that's an order, understood?" "Yes, sir," Jenna answered reluctantly, her voice barely audible. She glanced down at Orion, silently seeking strength. Together, they stepped out into the bitter cold, heading toward Lake Merrow. At the lakeside, Jonathan Holloway sat quietly as usual, enveloped in a thick woolen coat, his breath forming small clouds in the air. The lake's tranquility had become his sanctuary, yet he felt increasingly uneasy, aware of the mounting suspicion he had unintentionally provoked. He was lost deep in contemplation when movement at the edge of his vision captured his attention. Approaching slowly along the gravel path, Jenna felt her heart quicken with anxiety. Orion, sensing Jenna's emotional turmoil, moved cautiously forward, ears pricked, eyes unwaveringly focused. Jenna paused, giving Orion the signal to approach alone, trusting his instincts implicitly, though her heart was heavy with dread. Across the lake, hidden partly behind a thick pine trunk, Oliver Reed watched with wide-eyed fascination, his heart pounding rapidly with anticipation and concern. Midnight, the sleek black cat lounged lazily beside him, indifferent to the unfolding drama. Oliver had taken to rising earlier each day, drawn by the strange bond forming between himself, Jonathan, and now Jenna. The sense of witnessing something profoundly significant gripped him. Nearby, Father Albert Mason had also arrived unnoticed, his curiosity heightened by the rumors and suspicion swirling through Pineview. Father Mason's tall figure loomed quietly behind a cluster of trees, his dark robes blending into shadows. He felt compelled to witness the confrontation himself, determined to protect his congregation from perceived threats. Meanwhile, along the lake's opposite shore, a new spectator appeared. Clara Bennett, The town veterinarian had paused during her routine morning walk with her elderly Labrador, Samson. Clara was in her late 30s, petite but resilient, with chestnut curls escaping beneath her knitted wool cap and a warm smile that usually set people at ease. Known in Pineview as compassionate yet fiercely independent, she had become accustomed to solitude after losing her husband to illness 3 years prior. Clara watched curiously, concern edging her expression as Jenna and Orion approached Jonathan. Samson, aged but wise, sat quietly at her side, sensing the tension from afar. At Jenna's signal, Orion advanced slowly toward Jonathan, his powerful shoulders flexing beneath his fur. The morning stillness seemed to tighten around the lakeside, every observer holding their breath. Jonathan turned slowly, his calm eyes meeting Orion's directly. The dog halted abruptly, his ears folding gently backward, head tilted as if listening intently to some inner voice. Jonathan offered Orion a small, weary smile. "Hello again, friend," Jonathan murmured softly, extending his hand openly. Orion stepped cautiously forward, lowering his head. Then, astonishing everyone who watched, Orion gently laid himself at Jonathan's feet, resting his chin calmly on the older man's shoe. The gesture was unmistakably affectionate, even reverent, completely defying Jenna's orders and Dawson's suspicions. A collective gasp rippled quietly through the small, scattered audience. Jenna stood frozen, astonishment mixed with relief flooding her senses. Oliver's heart leapt with excitement. Father Mason frowned thoughtfully, puzzlement edging out suspicion. Clara Bennett watched in stunned admiration, recognizing instantly the gentle wisdom behind Orion's unexpected choice. From the sheriff's vehicle parked discreetly nearby, Dawson stared in disbelief, his rigid features twisting with confusion and anger. His knuckles whitened as his grip tightened around the steering wheel, grappling internally with embarrassment and frustration at having been defied, by a dog, no less. Jonathan gently stroked Orion's soft fur, the dog sighing contentedly beneath his hand. He glanced toward Jenna, his voice gentle yet clear. "Thank you, Deputy. You have a fine partner here." Jenna finally found her voice, stepping forward hesitantly. I'm sorry for disturbing you again, sir," she stammered, profoundly moved by Orion's intuitive decision. "No harm done," Jonathan assured softly. "Sometimes animals see truths that humans overlook." Jenna nodded, deeply touched, yet worried about facing Dawson's wrath. Nearby, Oliver Reed emerged boldly from his hiding spot, Midnight trailing lazily behind. Without hesitation, Oliver sat beside Jonathan, openly demonstrating solidarity and friendship. Jonathan smiled warmly, touched by Oliver's courageous gesture. Father Mason slowly approached, curiosity overpowering his initial mistrust. His sharp eyes studied Jonathan carefully, sensing immediately the depth of kindness radiating from the elderly man. "Perhaps," Father Mason began gently, choosing his words carefully, "we misjudged you, sir." Jonathan smiled patiently, eyes reflecting the wisdom of age and experience. "No offense taken, Father. Suspicion often accompanies the unknown." Meanwhile, Clara Bennett and Samson quietly made their way closer, drawn irresistibly toward the unfolding scene. Clara offered a gentle, reassuring smile. "Seems you've made quite an impression," she remarked softly to Jonathan. He chuckled gently. "Not my intention, I assure you." Dawson finally emerged from his vehicle, approaching stiffly, anger barely contained. "Collins, explain yourself." He barked roughly, glaring at Orion, whose gentle demeanor contrasted sharply against Dawson's hostility. "Sheriff," Orion sensed no threat. Jenna replied firmly, courage rising within her. "Perhaps we've misread the situation entirely." Dawson's jaw tightened visibly, fury and embarrassment mixing dangerously. He opened his mouth, ready to reprimand Jenna harshly, but paused as Clara Bennett stepped forward assertively, her gentle voice edged with quiet authority. "Sheriff, forgive my intrusion," Clara began respectfully. but animals rarely misjudge character. Father Mason nodded thoughtfully in agreement, his earlier suspicion shifting toward cautious respect. Dawson, confronted openly by respected members of Pineview, hesitated momentarily, grudgingly reassessing the scene before him. Very well, Dawson finally conceded gruffly, eyes still wary but softening slightly. But the community expects answers. Jonathan nodded calmly, meeting Dawson's gaze openly. Perhaps soon, Sheriff, he promised quietly, his voice sincere yet guarded. As the observers slowly dispersed, Jenna remained thoughtfully by Jonathan's side, Orion still resting contentedly at his feet. The morning chill lingered stubbornly, but a subtle shift had occurred around Lake Merrow. Doubt and fear had given way, ever so slightly, to cautious curiosity and tentative trust. Unseen bonds had begun to weave, gently, through Pineview, quietly promising changes none could yet foresee. After Orion's unexpected show of gentle reverence toward Jonathan Holloway, Pineview's cautious curiosity deepened into outright fascination. The late autumn afternoons stretched lazily over the sleepy town, sunlight timidly breaking through the thinning clouds, casting long, amber streaks across Lake Merrow. Conversations buzzed quietly in diners, shops, and living rooms, each exchange speculating about the man and his connection to the enigmatic German shepherd. The crisp air carried whispers, theories blending into the town's collective memory. Oliver Reed, whose young heart had been profoundly moved by Orion's gentle behavior, now walked briskly down Main Street, his mind bursting with questions. The 12-year-old boy, with messy brown hair perpetually flopping into eager green eyes, clutched his notebook tightly. Midnight, the sleek black cat who had become his frequent companion, followed gracefully behind him. Oliver had already decided he needed answers, and Evelyn Harper, Pineview's self-appointed keeper of town records, seemed like the ideal place to start. Evelyn's cozy cottage sat nestled between two towering maple trees, its weathered walls draped in ivy that had stubbornly crept upward over decades. Inside, Evelyn's cluttered living room felt warm and welcoming, scented faintly of lavender tea and old paper. Oliver knocked hesitantly, heart pounding nervously. The door opened, revealing Evelyn's kind face, smiling warmly as always. "Oliver, to what do I owe this pleasant surprise?" "I need your help," Oliver began earnestly. He quickly recounted the lakeside encounter between Orion and Jonathan, his words tumbling over each other. Evelyn listened carefully, her blue eyes twinkling with renewed intrigue. "Fascinating," Evelyn murmured thoughtfully. "Let's see what we can find." Together, they sifted through Evelyn's collection of old newspapers, letters, and historical notes scattered chaotically yet lovingly throughout her home. Meanwhile, Jenna Collins sat alone in the quiet corner of Pineview's modest police station, her heart heavy with unresolved thoughts. Orion lay quietly beside her desk, occasionally glancing up at her as if sensing her turmoil. Jenna's fingers trembled slightly as she unlocked an old digital file labeled Orion, classified service record, curiosity mixing with apprehension as she opened the document. Her breath caught sharply. Orion's file, meticulously detailed, revealed a startling past Jenna had never known. Orion had been specially trained for an elite Vatican protection detail 4 years earlier, tasked explicitly with security during high-profile religious gatherings. Jenna's eyes widened in disbelief as she scrolled further. Orion had been present at the papal conclave, the very conclave at which Jonathan Holloway had become Pope Clement IX. Jenna felt chills ripple down her spine. Suddenly, Orion's gentle reaction made astonishing sense. Orion had recognized Jonathan from a deeply buried, nearly forgotten memory, a connection of profound trust formed amidst sacred corridors thousands of miles away. Stunned, Jenna leaned back heavily, absorbing the revelation. Orion watched her patiently, as if quietly validating her discovery. Her mind raced. Did Sheriff Dawson know? How deeply classified was Orion's past? Jenna felt an urgent responsibility to handle the newfound knowledge carefully, yet ethically. She gently reached down, stroking Orion's fur. "You're amazing," she whispered softly. Back at Evelyn's cottage, Oliver and Evelyn uncovered their own clues, finding a dated international news clipping Evelyn had saved out of mere curiosity years earlier. The headline boldly declared, "American Cardinal elected Pope, Jonathan Holloway becomes Pope Clement IX." Oliver stared wide-eyed, his mouth dropping open in astonishment. "Mrs. Harper," Oliver breathed softly, almost reverently. "He's the Pope." Evelyn's eyes glittered, excitement mingling with awe. "My goodness, Oliver, we certainly have stumbled onto something extraordinary." Meanwhile, at the Pineview Veterinary Clinic, Clara Bennett gently checked Samson's arthritic joints. The elderly Labrador lay quietly on the exam table, tail thumping gently against the surface. Clara's thoughtful mind still lingered on Orion's interaction with Jonathan. It had felt almost spiritual, as if she'd witnessed a silent yet powerful reunion. The clinic's bell rang softly as Father Albert Mason stepped inside, his tall, slender figure instantly recognizable in his dark clerical robes. His expression was troubled, eyes lined deeply with thought. "Afternoon, Clara," he began politely, hands folded calmly in front of him. "Might I trouble you for a moment?" "Of course, Father," Clara replied warmly, sensing his unease. She led him to a small sitting area beside the reception desk. Father Mason sat quietly, glancing briefly toward Samson with a gentle smile before turning somber once more. "I find myself troubled deeply by recent events," Father Mason confessed quietly. "Jonathan's presence, it unsettles me. Yet I saw something profound by that lake, something I cannot explain rationally." Clara nodded thoughtfully, her warm gaze gentle and reassuring. "Sometimes animals sense things we cannot. Trust them, Father. Perhaps the explanation is simpler and kinder than fear makes it seem." Father Mason sighed softly, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Thank you, Clara," he murmured gratefully, offering her a small, appreciative smile. He left soon after, walking thoughtfully through Pineview's quiet streets, his heart slowly opening toward cautious acceptance. Oliver, unable to contain his excitement any longer, hurriedly approached Jenna outside the police station, midnight trailing serenely behind him. Jenna saw him coming, his wide eyes alight with discovery. "He's the Pope, Deputy Collins," Oliver blurted breathlessly, thrusting the clipping eagerly into Jenna's startled hands. Jenna smiled gently, touched by Oliver's earnest enthusiasm. "I know," she admitted softly, meeting his surprised gaze. Oliver's excitement quickly shifted into serious contemplation, recognizing the gravity of Jenna's admission. "What now?" Oliver asked quietly, suddenly understanding their shared responsibility in protecting Jonathan's privacy. "We keep this safe for now," Jenna instructed calmly. "Pineview isn't ready yet for this truth." Oliver nodded solemnly, trusting Jenna implicitly. Together, their silent agreement solidified a new bond of shared understanding and respect. Back at the lake, Jonathan Holloway sat quietly, unaware his carefully guarded past had unraveled within Pineview's gentle confines. Orion, temporarily under Jenna's care, now trotted calmly toward him, Jenna and Oliver following behind at a respectful distance. Orion approached gently, sitting quietly at Jonathan's feet once more, the silent understanding between them clearer now than ever. Jonathan reached out slowly, stroking Orion's fur affectionately. "So, you remember me," he whispered softly, his voice thick with emotion. Jenna's heart tightened gently, witnessing a moment profoundly moving yet intensely private. As evening descended quietly over Pineview, townsfolk retreated indoors, their whispers fading gently into nightfall's comforting silence. The revelations shared quietly that day had forged unseen bonds, connections deepening silently, trust slowly blossoming beneath Pineview's serene surface. At home that night, Oliver sat thoughtfully beside his bedroom window, midnight curled comfortably at his feet. He knew their discovery was deeply significant yet also deeply fragile. He resolved quietly to protect Jonathan's secret, understanding now that true courage often meant quiet, unwavering compassion. Across town, Jenna quietly secured Orion's file, safely locking away the remarkable truths it contained. Orion watched her calmly, his wise eyes gently reassuring her, silently affirming that trust and compassion mattered more than mere protocol. Outside, beneath the gentle glow of Pineview's streetlights, Father Mason walked homeward quietly, his thoughtful heart gradually embracing a cautious yet profound acceptance of Jonathan's quiet presence. Thus, Pineview's collective heart began shifting gently from fear toward understanding, fueled silently by quiet acts of courage, compassion, and reverent awe. And at its heart stood Jonathan Holloway, quietly unaware of how deeply he had touched each of their lives. Pineview awoke to a particularly clear autumn morning, sunlight pouring generously through branches stripped nearly bare by a recent windstorm. The lingering cold sharpened the air, leaving a crispness that invigorated anyone who stepped outside. The town itself was quiet, still murmuring from yesterday's revelations, though unaware of the deeper truths yet to unfold. For one man, however, this day promised answers, answers he could no longer wait for. Father Albert Mason rose early, restless and contemplative. Having been raised in Pineview, Albert felt deeply responsible for his community, shouldering the spiritual burdens of others quietly yet steadfastly. His tall, lean frame, always meticulously upright, now moved with an unusual urgency as he dressed quickly, his movements betraying a barely contained impatience. His keen, thoughtful face, with sharp lines etched by years of pastoral duty, reflected his inner turmoil clearly. For days, Albert's mind had circled around Jonathan Holloway, the enigmatic figure who had disrupted Pineview's calm rhythm. Now, after sleepless hours of silent prayer, Albert finally grasped why the man's gentle presence seemed hauntingly familiar. As he hurried down the wooded path toward Lake Merrow, the morning's crisp silence deepened his reflection. Recollections from a newspaper article Evelyn Harper had shown him years ago suddenly resurfaced vividly. An image of Pope Clement IX, recently elected, captured during his inauguration. How had he missed it? The realization struck him forcefully, driving him onward. Albert was determined to speak with Jonathan directly, to seek clarity for himself and for Pineview. Near the lake, Jonathan Holloway sat quietly on his now familiar bench, his face calm yet shadowed with profound melancholy. His gentle eyes stared outward, lost in silent communion with nature and his troubled conscience. Jonathan had hoped his quiet refuge here could shield him from the burdens he carried from Rome. Yet he knew Pineview's peace, however soothing, could not resolve the ache of unresolved guilt he harbored, a guilt stemming from his perceived failure to stop a devastating scandal within the church, a wound still fresh in his soul. As Albert approached cautiously, Jonathan glanced up, instantly recognizing the quiet dignity in the priest's bearing. Father Mason slowed, stopping respectfully at a short distance. "Forgive my intrusion," Albert began carefully, his deep voice steady yet humble. "But might we speak?" Jonathan smiled gently, welcoming Albert's respectful sincerity. "Of course, Father," he answered quietly, indicating the seat beside him. Albert joined him silently, both men briefly staring out at the serene lake, collecting their thoughts. "Your Pope Clement IX," Albert finally spoke, voice gentle yet sure. "Jonathan Holloway." Jonathan sighed softly, his shoulders relaxing slightly in relief. "Yes," he admitted quietly, no longer hiding the truth. "I am." Albert regarded him thoughtfully, eyes filled with compassion. "Why Pineview?" he asked softly, sensing deeply the Pope's troubled spirit. Jonathan hesitated briefly, then spoke softly yet clearly. "To pray, Father. To find forgiveness within myself. A terrible scandal erupted in Rome, corruption at the highest levels. I saw it happening, yet couldn't stop it in time. I carry that burden deeply, painfully." Albert nodded quietly, understanding profoundly the struggle Jonathan described. Forgiveness can be elusive, Albert spoke gently, especially forgiving oneself. Jonathan nodded, his expression vulnerable and grateful. Precisely, he murmured softly. Here, beside your lake, I sought silence to confront my failure directly, honestly. Across town, Sheriff Grant Dawson sat rigidly at his desk, sleepless and troubled. The previous day's events replayed constantly in his mind. The scene by the lake, Orion's gentle reaction, the quiet rebuke from Jenna Collins. Dawson's heart, hardened by suspicion and pride, now ached deeply with regret. Memories of past mistakes surfaced sharply, his harsh judgments, the friendships ruined by stubbornness, and the recent loss of his family through a painful divorce. Jonathan's situation painfully mirrored Dawson's own errors, too quick to judge, too slow to understand. A sudden knock interrupted Dawson's painful introspection. Jenna entered cautiously, Orion at her side, both observing him quietly yet compassionately. Jenna's expressive blue eyes reflected sympathy rather than accusation, softening Dawson's stubborn pride. "Sheriff," Jenna began gently, "I've come to speak openly. Pineview needs clarity, and so do you." Dawson met her gaze reluctantly, recognizing the sincerity and strength within her quiet words. "I've been rash," Dawson admitted quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "My judgment clouded by pride and fear. Orion was right. He saw truth clearly where I saw only suspicion." Jenna nodded gently, deeply moved by Dawson's admission. "We can still set this right, Sheriff," she urged softly. "The community trusts you, and they deserve honesty." Dawson straightened resolutely, gathering courage from Jenna's quiet strength. "You're right, Jenna," he conceded firmly. "Let's give Pineview the truth." That afternoon, Pineview's small town hall filled quietly with curious citizens, drawn by Dawson's solemn announcement. Jonathan, accompanied quietly by Father Mason, entered discreetly, seating himself humbly near the front. Jenna stood protectively beside Orion, her heart pounding nervously yet determinedly. Oliver Reed sat close by, midnight curled comfortably on his lap, wide-eyed and solemnly supportive. Clara Bennett sat quietly nearby, gently reassuring Samson, resting calmly beside her chair. Dawson stepped forward solemnly, his voice clear yet softened by humility. "Pineview, we've faced uncertainty recently. I wrongly allowed suspicion and fear to cloud my judgment. Today, we must acknowledge truth openly and courageously." He paused briefly, meeting Jonathan's calm gaze directly. "This man," Dawson continued solemnly, "is Jonathan Holloway, Pope Clement IX. He came here peacefully, privately seeking spiritual solace. My suspicion toward him was misguided, a grave error." A collective gasp rippled gently through the audience. Evelyn Harper, eyes wide with astonishment and vindication, clutched Jeanette's arm tightly. Oliver watched proudly, Midnight purring contentedly on his lap, feeling quietly victorious in protecting Jonathan's secret until now. Dawson continued humbly, "We owe Pope Clement our respect and compassion, not suspicion. I apologize deeply for my errors." He glanced gratefully toward Jenna, who stepped forward confidently. "Pope Clement's presence here brought us unexpected lessons," Jenna began clearly, her gentle voice steady yet firm. "Orion reminded us that compassion sees truths suspicion blinds us from. Let's embrace this lesson openly, moving forward with understanding rather than fear." Pineview's townspeople murmured quietly, reflecting deeply on Jenna's words. Father Mason stood, addressing his congregation gently yet firmly. "Let's learn together, embracing this unexpected gift of grace and understanding Pope Clement's presence offers us." Jonathan stood slowly, moved deeply by Pineview's quiet acceptance. "I thank you, Pineview." He spoke softly, humbly sincere. "I came here quietly, burdened by guilt. Your kindness and compassion today show forgiveness isn't found in isolation, but among community, openly shared, courageously given. Warm applause rippled through the room, emotional and heartfelt. Oliver beamed proudly, Jenna smiling warmly beside Orion, who calmly watched Jonathan with gentle eyes full of quiet devotion. Outside, sunlight now poured generously over Pineview, chasing away the remnants of shadows lingering stubbornly within hearts. Dawson felt a deep, cleansing relief, his stubborn pride finally yielding to humility and truth. Jenna's heart felt lighter, Orion's gentle wisdom now recognized and appreciated fully. Father Mason and Jonathan shared quiet smiles, recognizing profound healing beginning quietly yet powerfully among Pineview's gentle community. Together, they walked slowly toward Lake Merrow, the afternoon air fresh, hopeful, quietly reverent. Pineview's peaceful streets now hummed quietly with renewed understanding, compassion blossoming openly beneath the town's gentle autumn sky. The morning of the gathering dawned bright and clear, sunlight sparkling gently over the placid waters of Lake Merrow, the crisp air promising renewal. Pineview buzzed quietly yet eagerly, townspeople filing toward the small lakeside park for an event unprecedented in their sleepy history. Overnight, Pineview had undergone a transformation, not visibly but deeply felt in every heart. Sheriff Grant Dawson's sincere public apology, coupled with Pope Clement IX's quiet humility, had ignited a powerful sense of healing among the townsfolk. The event today, hastily arranged but warmly anticipated, would symbolize the town's embrace of compassion and forgiveness. The park quickly filled, families bundled warmly against the lingering chill, murmuring quietly in expectant curiosity. At the park's edge stood a makeshift wooden platform adorned simply with bouquets of bright autumn leaves, the vibrant reds and gold symbolic of nature's own renewal. Father Albert Mason, dignified in his black clerical robes, greeted arrivals gently, his quiet presence a reassuring anchor amidst the excited energy. Evelyn Harper, her soft scarf fluttering lightly in the breeze, sat smiling quietly with Jeanette, whispering animatedly about witnessing history firsthand. Clara Bennett arrived with Samson, her elderly Labrador moving slowly yet happily at her side, his wise, gentle eyes reflecting serenity. Clara's thoughtful expression hinted at quiet pride. Pineview's renewed compassion mirrored values she had always championed quietly. Nearby, Oliver Reed sat solemnly on a folding chair, his usually restless form now quietly introspective. Midnight nestled contentedly on his lap, purring softly as Oliver carefully scribbled notes into his notebook, preparing mentally for his school assignment. The weight of responsibility he felt, to capture truthfully Pineview's transformative experience, settled quietly yet firmly in his young heart. As the clock ticked toward 10, Sheriff Dawson stepped onto the small stage, his once stern face now softened considerably. He stood proudly but humbly, his broad shoulders slightly bowed under the weight of genuine remorse and redemption. The audience quieted respectfully, their eyes filled with newfound empathy. Dawson cleared his throat softly, speaking directly yet gently to his neighbors and friends. Pineview, our community faced uncertainty recently. My errors, judgments made hastily and unfairly, nearly tore at our town's quiet peace. Today, Pope Clement IX graciously joins us, not merely as a guest, but as a teacher of forgiveness and reconciliation. Warm applause greeted Dawson's words, the crowd's response sincere and heartfelt. Jonathan Holloway rose quietly, stepping calmly toward the platform, his serene face reflecting deep humility. Orion, calm and dignified, patted softly at his side, his presence an embodiment of loyalty and trust. Jenna Collins followed respectfully, her gentle demeanor reflecting quiet strength and compassion. Jonathan took his place beside Dawson, turning calmly toward the townsfolk gathered expectantly. His gentle, wise eyes swept the audience slowly, meeting each gaze openly yet humbly. My dear friends, Jonathan began softly yet clearly. I arrived quietly, seeking solitude to wrestle with my own failings. Instead, Pineview gave me unexpected yet profound lessons about humility, compassion, and the extraordinary courage needed to embrace forgiveness. He paused briefly, voice thick with emotion. Sheriff Dawson, your humility and courage in publicly admitting your error deeply inspire me. I extend to you openly, sincerely, my full forgiveness. Indeed, reconciliation, embracing openly the courage to forgive, is the very foundation upon which our community and church find strength. The gathered crowd, deeply moved, murmured gentle assent, the power of Jonathan's sincerity resonating profoundly within each heart. Dawson, visibly touched, nodded gratefully, his own eyes glistening gently. Jonathan smiled warmly, turning now toward Orion, who sat quietly, his wise amber eyes watching Jonathan intently, faithfully. Jonathan's voice softened further, filled deeply with reverent affection. This remarkable companion, Jonathan continued gently, recognized me from a place and time I had nearly forgotten, a distant corridor within the Vatican's sacred halls. Orion reminded us compassion needs no words, truth no explanation. He symbolizes forgiveness's quiet power, loyal, gentle, unwavering. He knelt quietly before Orion, laying one hand gently atop the dog's strong, calm head. In the Church's tradition, I bless you, Orion, and thank you profoundly for guiding Pineview and myself toward true forgiveness. The solemnity and sincerity of the blessing deeply touched everyone present, eyes moistening with emotion and gratitude. Watching quietly, Jenna felt profound pride and gratitude toward Orion, whose quiet wisdom had gently guided Pineview toward compassion. Father Mason's solemn face reflected deep humility, recognizing quietly the powerful spiritual lesson unfolding before his eyes. Oliver scribbled frantically yet earnestly, his notes becoming the foundation of a story Pineview would cherish profoundly. At the ceremony's conclusion, townsfolk lingered quietly, deeply reflective conversations weaving gently through the park. Jonathan spoke privately with Dawson, their exchange quiet yet deeply sincere, each man profoundly grateful for reconciliation's quiet power. Jenna gently stroked Orion's soft fur, eyes bright with tears of quiet joy and pride. Nearby, Oliver approached Jonathan tentatively, midnight calmly trailing behind him. Jonathan smiled gently, warmly encouraging the boy. Oliver's voice trembled slightly as he spoke earnestly. Your story, what happened here, it matters deeply. I want to write about forgiveness and Orion, and how compassion changed Pineview. Jonathan placed a gentle hand reassuringly on Oliver's shoulder, smiling gently. Your words hold power. Oliver, he encouraged softly. Tell our story honestly, courageously. Oliver nodded resolutely, heart swelling proudly. I promise, he vowed quietly yet firmly. Midnight purred softly beside him, her calm presence reassuring. Days later, Oliver stood bravely before his classmates, reading aloud from his carefully composed essay. His words, simple yet profoundly moving, described Pope Clement's quiet humility, Dawson's courageous apology, Orion's silent wisdom, and Pineview's quiet yet transformative embrace of forgiveness. Teachers and students listened quietly, deeply touched, each heart profoundly reflecting upon the power Oliver's words captured gently yet truthfully. Throughout Pineview, Oliver's essay quietly spread, shared eagerly yet respectfully, its message resonating profoundly. Conversations deepened thoughtfully, families reflecting earnestly upon forgiveness, compassion, and quiet courage's power. Slowly yet unmistakably, Pineview's heart transformed, stronger, gentler, unified profoundly by forgiveness's quiet, healing power. Jonathan Holloway, Pope Clement IX, remained quietly among Pineview's gentle rhythms for several days afterward, warmly embraced now by a community profoundly grateful for his quiet wisdom and humility. When eventually he departed, he did so quietly yet profoundly changed, his heart lighter, burden eased gently by Pineview's sincere compassion and forgiveness. Jenna Collins, profoundly inspired, continued quietly serving Pineview, Orion always loyally beside her, both revered quietly yet profoundly by townsfolk grateful for their quiet courage and wisdom. Sheriff Dawson, deeply humbled, led Pineview thoughtfully, his judgments tempered now profoundly by compassion's quiet strength. Father Mason's sermons gently yet powerfully emphasized forgiveness. Pineview's spiritual community quietly yet deeply strengthened. And Oliver Reed, quietly yet profoundly matured by events, proudly cherished forever the quiet courage and compassion Pineview and Orion had profoundly taught him. Thus, beneath Pineview's gently turning leaves and quiet waters, forgiveness quietly bloomed profoundly. Hearts and community unified deeply yet humbly, forever changed by gentle courage's quiet power. In life, it's easy to judge others hastily, but the story of Pope Clement and Orion reminds us gently of the power of forgiveness and understanding. Sometimes, it's through silent gestures and quiet compassion that hearts truly heal. Just as Orion saw the truth beyond words, we too can choose kindness and humility in our daily lives. Has this story touched your heart? Share it with those you care about. Leave a thoughtful comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories. May God bless you with patience, compassion, and the courage to forgive. If you believe in the gentle power of forgiveness, please comment Amen.